Hello and welcome to the video. And today we are discussing variables and data types in JavaScript. So before I explain to you what variables are, let me walk you through a simple scenario. Assume you want to buy something off the internet. So what will happen? You will go onto that website and you will select that product and then you will check out. On the checkout page, you will see a form. This is basically a form I've created. Okay, so this is a form which will ask you for some information about yourself, such as the name, your phone number, your address, your email. And once you have given this information to the website or to the program, what will happen? This will do something and the product will get delivered to you in 2 3 days or whatever the time it is. Now, as a developer or a programmer, you are responsible for this part, which is our website. So when you're writing your website or a program, this program needs the access to this information that was provided to you, right? So in programming, we have something called variables where we store this information basically, we store in the variable. So when we need it, the program can access it. To understand this, assume a container which we are calling username. So this is basically the name of container, username, and it has a value stored in it, which is Gaurav Kumar, or it can be your name. Same way, it's phone, so it can be someone's phone number, something like this, and address. It can be some address XYZ or something else, right? And same way, it can be email. So these containers that we are seeing, these are the variables that we create in all programming languages. Basically, all programming languages have this concept. Now, we'll move on to the coding part where I will show you how we create the variables in JavaScript and what all information we can store in those variables. So this is our folder in the VS Code, and I've created a variable.js file here. And this is the content that we need to study today. This is variables. We have already basically seen what variables are. Now we'll move on to how to create the variables. So before we do that, there is something called the reserve keyword, and those are basically all programming languages out there have some reserve keywords which has some kind of specific meaning to the language. And uh, here are some keywords that we have in JavaScript. Uh, Okay, and these three keywords that we are seeing here, right? These are the keywords that we use to basically create a variable, right? So for creating a variable, all these keywords basically have some kind of function that we use them for, and these three are for creating variables. So let me basically create a variable using the var one. Okay, so in var we do something like this. We first use this variable, basically this keyword, and then we give some kind of name to that variable, and then we assign some kind of value like this. Okay, now this is a variable, and this is a value that we have assigned to this variable. Okay, now this, how can I make sure that this value is assigned to it? Simple, we can console log it. So you can console log it, and you, okay, sorry, I gave it a wrong name. So C console B. Yeah, so okay, this is fine, right? Now this value is stored in this one, and this is the whole variable itself. This variable has two phases. First is the declaration phase, which is meaning basically I showed you containers, right? So we are basically creating a container, okay, and then we have initialization, okay. So we are storing some value in that container. Now, this is not the technical definition. I'm just simplifying it for you so it's easy for you to understand it. Okay, so what happens? We are first creating the container and then we are storing some value to that container. And this is how we create variables in JavaScript. Now, there are some rules in basically a naming convention, or we can call it rules, basically, that must be followed when we are creating a variable. Okay, so for example, you can create a variable like this. Okay, okay. So basically, you can create it using small letters, big letters. You can include numbers, you can include underscore, and you can include a dollar sign to the variable name. Okay, so you can create something like username one. Okay, and you can give it something like Gaurav, Rag, something like this. Okay, or you can use it like user name underscore one or dollar, something like this, right? And that is also fine. Let's call it Gaurav. Okay, where underscore user name. Okay, zero. Something like this we can do. Now, the variable names in the JavaScript are case sensitive, meaning if I do user name and I do username like this, these two are basically two different variables. So I can just show it to you. Console.log username and console.log username, and I can print those two here. And you see, okay, I again give it a wrong name. Sorry. So username Gaurav Anurag and this is Saurabh. So these two are case sensitive. JavaScript has case sensitive name in. So this becomes basically two separate variables. Now we have learned how to create variables using var. There is also let and const. So we can do something like this same way. Let me just comment this out. Let me just don't do name. We can just do a, and I can just give it an age. So, and I can again declare using const, and I can give it something like gender, which is male, right? So this way we can create variables in JavaScript. Okay, why there exist three? The first one, the var one, is kind of ancient. It is there since the first versions of JavaScript, and it had some kind of problem, basically some problems that you don't need to worry about just right now because you won't be using this one much. Okay, mostly we deal with like let and const way of creating variables. So mostly we use this one. So you will only be working with this one in the future. So we have learned about what are variables, what are keywords. We have learned about declaration and initialization. We have seen some rules for this thing. If you basically break this rule, you won't be able to do something like, so something like this is not possible. You can basically not do this because the rule is proper. You can do something like this, or you can give it some random value, but it cannot start with one, cannot start with number. Okay. Now let's move on to what we can store in variables, which is the data types. So data type is nothing but the type of data we store in the variable. comment this out. Okay, so this is the type of data that we can store it in variables. So we have types string, we have numbers, we have booleans, we have null, we have undefined, we have objects, arrays, symbol, and begins. Okay, so we won't be talking this one for now. So let me just take them here and just put it here. Okay, so this one will not be seeing in this video, not seeing this. Yep. We'll see this one. Okay, so first of all, what is a string? Anything that is wrapped in double quotes or single quotes in JavaScript, right? It can be name, uh, it can be somebody's phone number, or it can be someone's address, like some address, like random. Let me just give it something, right? So these are what we call strings in JavaScript. Okay, anything that is wrapped inside double quotes or single quote is considered a string in JavaScript. Okay, let me comment this out. What is a number? Number, everybody knows what is a number, right? So any number like this or like this, right? These are numbers in JavaScript. There's nothing much to explain in numbers, right? It's a number. Everybody has been reading about numbers since nursery to class 10 or 12, right? Then we have booleans. So boolean basically is representing the state of something, right? So how do we represent a state? Using like true or false. Basically, boolean only has two values. It will be either true or it will be either false. So we use them in some kind of situation, like assume you want to make sure someone is adult, right? So you will create something called some variable like this is adult, and you will basically check if it is true or it is false. If it is true, that means it's adult, so he can like go and give votes or drink alcohol or something, right? If it's not an adult, then he cannot do those things, right? So that's booleans. Now these three basically represent a state of something, basically something that exists that has meaning. In JavaScript, we have null and undefined, which represent something that does not have meaning or nothing, right? Basically, it represents two different state of nothing. Okay, so what do I mean by it? Assume you are in a scenario where you don't know what is the name of a user. Okay, so let's call a friend name. You have a friend and you want to store his name, but you don't know what his name is. So in that scenario, you can give it null, or let or you can simply do something like this, right? So this and this, basically I can't do it because this is a quirk of let. So once you have basically declared a variable, you cannot redeclare it. Okay, you can give it some kind of different value, but you cannot redeclare it. So I cannot redeclare it. However, I can assign it some different value. I can just assign it a j, right? So this is perfectly fine, but I cannot redeclare it, right? You know the declaration part, right? Which is this part. So I cannot do this. Okay. So when you don't know a friend's name and so you can either start it with null, or you can just do let and name, and you can just do this, right? So in both the scenario, if I log it, right, console.log here, friend name, if I do friend name here, correct, right? Yeah, if I run it, so So in this scenario where I have not assigned it any value, right, where I have not done any initialization, I've just created basically a empty container, right? So in that case, JavaScript will assign it a value which is going to be undefined, right? And if I don't do this and I define it some value like this, now it's still an empty value. It's like still you're not sure what the value is, but in this case, the value is going to be yeah, in this case, this value is going to be null. Okay. Now we have learned about strings, numbers, booleans, null, and undefined. Now let me go on to something we call objects and arrays. See, string is a way to represent a single type of information, right? From a string such as name, you can only gather one kind of information, which is the name of someone or someone's phone number or someone's address, right? But if you want to store a collection of information, we can say here, right? So in that scenario, we have something called objects. So in objects, we basically can store multiple properties of something. So example, you create objects like this curly bracket, you give it that, then you can give it name. So this is going to be the name of the user, which can be Gaurav. You can give it age, which can again be 27. Now you can give it a phone number if you want, right? Some random number. Don't go on this like that's not correct, but just an example. You can give it some kind of example or email like test at the rate mail, right? So this is the user. Now what we have done, we have created a variable called user and we have all the information about that user in a single variable, right? So let me just comment this out because I don't want to show this all thing in the logs. So you can now console log it, and what will happen, you will see all this information about the user in the log. Yeah. See all the information. Now objects, in the objects we can do like this, or we can do something like this, user dot name here, right? If you click dot after user, you will see all these three things that we have. So you can select anything and you can just see and see this is printed here, right? So this is object. In the later videos we'll go deep dive into the objects and other stuff, but this is just an introduction videos on like how to create variables and what those are. So we'll not go in details here. Same way we can create arrays. So what arrays are, basically it's like continuous set of information. So you create them like this and you can store any kind of information here. It can be, basically it can be a number, it can be string. In JavaScript at least it can be a user. Okay, let me just copy this user itself. Okay, so I can either copy this thing or I can just copy this thing alone. Okay, so it's the same thing, and I can just put true or false, everything I can do here, and I can then log it. Let me just call it array because it's an array and it's not users, and we can run it and you can see that it is printing properly. So this is an array. In the later videos we will go deep down into what an object is, what an array is, what are their methods, like how we work with them in programming and how they are different from the normal string, boolean, and these type of things. So this is it for today's video. I hope you learned something and I'll see you in the next one.